Texas State football coach G.J. Kinne. Looks like he just maybe went hunting or about to. And then Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoke, 365 Sports. Hey, let me ask you this. With all of what is swirling in college athletics, how excited are you to get on the field? I know you've been doing off-season stuff, but get on the field, practice, and get better and just be a part of football.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've probably had that feeling since about I was in Nantucket over the break and enjoying but about towards the end of vacation, you kind of start getting that itch. Like, all right, let's get on the field. I'm ready to get back around the guys. Let's go, like you said, let's go practice. Let's get better. And I think I said that at the media day at the Texas High School Convention is like we're gonna need all these reps. We need every fall practice. We need every walkthrough, every meeting. Because we have a bunch of new guys, new faces, and but that's exciting. I'm really excited about what we got going this year.
Well, since we've last talked to you, Coach, you are headed to a new conference next year in the Pac-12. What is that feeling like of excitement, and how have you seen it change how Texas State is known and perceived in the football community?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think President Danfus and Don Coryell did an unbelievable job, and the leadership and the vision they've had to get us to a conference like that, and that was good for the summer and all that. But obviously, we're concentrating now on fall practice and getting ready for this season, last year in the Sun Belt. But it's definitely exciting. I think recruiting has seen a little bit of momentum swing as far as that goes, and being able to talk about the pack and all that kind of good stuff. So it's definitely exciting and definitely a momentum changer for sure.
We've had this game before, Paul and Craig, back even a year ago when all the conference realignment was going on. Name everybody in the Big Ten. Name everybody, and it's hard. I mean, Can you name everybody even in your current conference, much less who's going to be in the pack?
Yeah, definitely can name everyone in the Sun Belt. The pack, I might need a little bit of work. Just start naming some state schools out west, and you'll be all right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. G.J. Kinne with us on 365 Sports. Paul?
So as you approach getting into camp and all those things, the way that it starts every year is very different than when you came up. You had your 85 guys and your walk-ons and all of these things that you knew their history and all these things. And now you're always going to have a bunch of players, whether it's like 60 new players, 20 new players, 10, depending on it. What is the challenge for you in making sure that you can set them on the path to building chemistry, knowing that the players have to build with each other and there's only so much a coach can do?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this. It's funny you brought it up. Last week you kind of start getting your thoughts ready for fall camp and all that as the summer goes. But we've really been operating this space since I've been here, so I feel like we have a little bit maybe an advantage just because of the experience. We since really UIW, we brought in a whole bunch of new faces that year, and then obviously at Texas State, us and Colorado, I think we're the top two, and we've just kind of continued that, and not necessarily by choice. Sometimes it's just the landscape of college football now. So I do feel like we have a little bit an advantage, and some just because of the experience factor, because we've been operating like this since I've been at Texas State.
DJ, I'll never forget when I asked you about Ashton Hawkins left your place for Baylor, and you told me that broke your heart. I hope you don't mind me sharing that, because you really love the kid, and now he's going through a eligibility issue. But that's not what I'm asking you about. I'm just asking you about the emotional part. Can you become too attached to anybody anymore?
No, I think you can. I'm never that's my special power. That's my special sauce. The relationship part of it. I love these kids, and I'm always going to get them to stay if it's the best thing for all parties, and do whatever I can possible to accomplish that. And I'm always going to pour into these guys and have those relationships, just because that's just the way I'm wired. I couldn't do it any other way. I've been around coaches that maybe aren't wired like that, and it's just not me. And that's one thing I'm always going to do is be myself, and I'm not going to let any outside circumstance change that.
That is the probably the biggest challenge, though, right? Of being emotionally connected. Now, I would say that most coaches are more like you than the opposite, that are just jaded, kind of, what cog in this machine can I make? Do you have to coach yourself up on, like, not getting too emotional when it comes down to those roster decisions that players are making for themselves?
Yeah, I think it's probably the other way, not necessarily the guys necessarily leaving, but maybe a guy that was on the roster before, or he's a good player but doesn't necessarily fit your scheme, and you want him to have the ability to go play somewhere and have that great college experience, and that's one good thing I think about the portal, is having the ability for those guys that, hey, maybe it's not the greatest fit, maybe it's not the bet, you have a coaching change or a scheme change, not necessarily us, just around the country, and that guy doesn't fit your system, and they have the ability to move on, and nothing against the kid, he might be a great player, just not necessary for you.
DJ, one more thing about the portal and also all of what's going on in the settlement. That you hear about tampering. You have had players who have been tampered with. How come no one will actually come out? Although I saw the story the other day where somebody actually brought up another school. Is it almost like you don't steal signs in baseball? Is it an unwritten rule? Do you think we'll start seeing more of people saying, no, they came after our guys before they were leaving?
I think maybe 3 years ago, if that trend would have continued, but I think a lot of times now it's going through these third parties, the agents and the all that kind of good stuff. So I think that's probably the main reason. Is obviously, there was, during the middle of the season last year, we had guys talking about this school and that school, and possibly redshirting or going into the portal because of it. And I think hopefully, that becomes something that changes throughout the landscape, and the NCAA, rules change, but it is the way it is right now. And so it kind of goes back to just that relationship part, and doing everything you can to pour into these kids, and hopefully they want to stay.
You got 3 quarterbacks out of the portal this year, if I'm correct. Have you settled on a guy yet, or are you still going in this week in practice with it wide open?
Yeah, it's definitely wide open, and we got a couple of guys that can play, and we're going to let it play out in fall camp. Obviously, you got to kind of start narrowing that thing down as the first game approaches, and just because of the reps, not necessarily because maybe one's pulling away from the other, or two of them are kind of neck and neck, but you kind of have to go with what you think is best for your team, and the guy that goes out there and makes the best decisions, and start getting that guy ready for game day.
Fran Brown and Dion mentioned that back during the spring about having a scrimmage. And I've always wondered, I remember I've asked coaches before about why don't you have intra-squad scrimmages even during the fall? I know injuries and I know all the whatever, the travel, but would that be good like you had in high school football? You experienced that.
With another school, or with your own
Yeah,
team?
with another school. Like,
Yeah.
let's say Texas State was maybe it's Baylor. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, would that not be, if you set it up right, healthy and good?
Yeah, I think I do like the thought of maybe a spring. I think that might
Okay.
be good, especially if they change it to one portal window in January,
Yeah.
like the coaches want. I think that would be a really good thing, because of, like you said, you go out there and kind of see exactly what you have, and can go the fall. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I know the NFL, you have preseason games, and maybe you go practice versus another team. I would probably like that more, kind of like what you said, not necessarily maybe a spring game type atmosphere, but maybe, hey, we go over to Waco and we have 2 days where we practice versus those guys, and you do
Yeah.
some inter squad scrimmaging and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that would be a good situation, and look, injuries are part of it, but at the same time, you got to get your guys ready.
Smokey and I've been at Cowboys camp 100 times, and one of the things that I only got to see like 2 of them when they practice with the Rams, but it's like a nice change of pace for the players. You experienced it when you were in the league.
Exactly.
It's just a nice change of pace where you can actually feel like, oh, I can go take a swing at this guy, or I can get riled up, and I don't have to walk back into the same locker room and have that awkward moment of like, hey, sorry, it's the heat of the moment kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly right. And it is a cool deal, and it just changes the pace up a little bit. Guys, tend to lock in a little bit more, and obviously at that level, you're fighting for a roster spot and all that. So there's a little bit more at stake. But yeah, it's definitely a good deal. I remember when versus the Ravens, Coach Kinney actually got thrown out of practice. Chip Kelly threw me out. I was playing receiver at the time, and you get back there as a red zone period, and the East Texas came out a little bit. Me and my teammates. So.
Hey, Beast Texas, baby, don't mess.
Yeah,
You had, am I right? You had a different offensive coordinator every year from high school through
yeah,
college.
yeah, exactly right. It had some
How
good
do
ones
you?
though.
No, you did. You really, really did, and you still improved. You got better. And some people could use that as an excuse. Does that help how you make sure you keep your coaching staff intact, other than someone getting obviously a promotion somewhere else?
Yeah, I think that definitely helped me. Just the different views and thoughts different coaches have, the way they see the game. But as far as going back to keeping your own coaches intact, I think just treating them right and being a good person, and now obviously I think talking about going back to the pack, I think financially that's going to be able to help us be able to keep some more
Mm-hmm.
coaches as well. So that all that goes into it for sure, and I think too, you got to groom those young guys, even if they're not young, those analysts and the quality controls, and your quarterback coaches, and they're in evaluation mode too every day, and just like this year, we promoted Landon Keppel. That when Coach Leftwich left, he'd been with me since Hawaii to UIW. He's been with me now for a couple years. Dexter McCool, our defensive coordinator, is the same deal, and especially on offense, those guys that I've been able to groom and be under, and they know the system. I think it just you always want to start there, and if they're the best person, then let's do it. But sometimes you might have to go outside, but hopefully not.
You when you see a young coach like that, how much of yourself do you see in that moment? Even though the histories might have been different, they might not have come up the same way you did
Yeah.
of playing at the higher levels or doing all that. But can you see it like a scout? Can you be like, oh, this
Yeah.
kid's got it?
Yeah, and I think that's probably going back to Coach Todd Graham and my dad. I think that's some of the best things that one of my strong suits is not just the evaluation of the player, but the evaluation of the coach. And you kind of look at the guys that we've had, whether it's Mac Leftwich, Jonathan Packey, and some of those guys that are now big time college coaches and all that. They were at UIW a couple of years ago, and we have a couple on staff right now. Smoke, Dane Evans. He was a quarterback at Tulsa, and
Yep.
he played in the NFL for a training camp, then went to the CFL and was a starter there in the CFL, and did some really good things over there. Got into coaching, was a high school coach a year ago, but it was always someone that was kind of on my radar. That if this guy could get in the right system and the right opportunity, I think he could be a big time coach. And he's been with us now all spring, and definitely one that'll probably be a future offensive coordinator here pretty soon.
With your father earlier today, now at Vernon High School, and as you mentioned, they got better last year, his first year on staff, and All-American at Baylor. What was the one piece of advice, or maybe something he said to you once you became obviously locked into being a coach?
I really just kind of grew up in it with being around my dad. You kind of take that for granted. I remember when we were in Little League picking all-star teams, and I was a part of that process. That's something that we always did, whether it was Little League or high school at Canton, putting together rosters and, hey, let's move this guy to linebacker. Let's move this guy from outside receiver to inside receiver. Let's move this guy from defensive end to center. We've always had those conversations over the dinner table, and obviously there's a lot of things that he taught me, but I think probably the biggest one is just the constant evaluation of everything, and the constant roster management, and where to put guys to go out there and succeed on game day.
How much did playing high school football in East Texas prepare you for the atmospheres that you faced along the way? Because there's very few places in the country, I mean, here in Texas, but particularly in East Texas, where it doesn't matter how big the school is, the game's intense.
Yeah.
That you have that maybe psychological edge going in, that when you got to college, you're like, well, this is kind of how it was all the time, just maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I think especially for me, it was probably a little amplified with my dad being a coach and going to Canton and then transferring to Gilmer and all that went on with that. I mean, we played Bishop Gorman week 1. I mean, that was a huge game at Tyler Rose, and we talk about the playoff games and all Smoky teams. I mean, there's a lot on the line, back in the day in East Texas, and it was just a great time, and it really is. I think that's maybe getting a little bit lost, even with the high school moving around and the transfers and all that. But East Texas is still, it's still pretty true to, hey, on Friday nights, everyone's it's the square is shut down and everyone's out on on Friday night, at the game. So it definitely prepared you, and just everything was bigger for sure.
Your grandfather, Bubba.
Yeah.
He coached you when you were what, in Pop Warner, and then your dad would come and coach on game days. How much of a memory? I know he's still around, and just how much that meant to you.
Oh man, that was huge. And one of the other things that you just kind of maybe take for granted, but I just had such great coaches at such a young age, and taught me to play the game the right way. I remember, one of my first games is, in tackle, and I was the quarterback, and he would run me about like Kenton ran me back in the day. And so I ran it a couple of times. And I laid there on the field, and he came out to midfield and said, "Stand up." And I said, I can, I'm hurt. And he said, if you're really hurt when you stand up, you'll fall back down. And so that's always that kind of stood with me, is kind of instilling that toughness in me. And he coached us hard. I mean, back even Little League, I mean, he was coaching us hard. And maybe some of the parents didn't understand, but I promise you, there's a lot of kids in Mesquite, Texas right now that are living a good life and instilled a lot of meaningful characteristics in them because of my grandpa.
I want to follow up then. The late hit out of bounds against Oklahoma State, where you were, I'm not out, but you were hurting. And then you still went in, I think, finished the game, and then they said you're not going to play against Boise, and you did, right?
Yeah.
Is that part of what you're talking about?
Yeah. I think it's just that mental and physical toughness. I think Coach Todd Graham was built that same way, and something that we worked on in the off season. And it's something that can be coached. It's something that can be taught, and it's the way you train. Little everything. There's you're always gonna have some sniffles or have a sore ankle or a sore shoulder, but just going out there and fighting for your teammates and fighting for your coaches, it still means something.
G.J. Kinne, head coach at Texas State. Paul, let's wrap it up with your last question.
Okay, what is the best sound to you the first day of real, like when you get to strap it on? Do you love that sound of plastic hitting plastic there?
I like that. I like the first go ball when everyone goes crazy and both sides are you catch a long touchdown pass and there's yelling on the offensive side, yelling on the defensive side, the celebration within the offensive group, and then same thing on defense. You get interception and everyone runs to the side, to the end zone and celebrates and all that. I like that. I like the teammates getting excited for the teammates. That's probably my favorite thing.
Eastern Michigan's your opening game, then at UTSA against your buddy Jeff Traylor, and then Arizona State. Well, what a difference in how people look at them this year compared to at this time a year ago.
Yeah, obviously they're a super talented squad, and Coach Dillingham's done an unbelievable job. And the run they went on last year, it was fun to see them kind of go through that Big 12 gauntlet and get into the college football playoff, knowing that we were up 21-7 on them in the second quarter right here at home, and had them kind of right where we wanted them, and for whatever reason couldn't get it done. But you still take pride in knowing that we prepared the right way, we had the guys in the right situation, just got to be able to finish it. And hopefully we go out there and Tempe this season and kind of put up that same performance and have a chance in the fourth quarter. I think a team like that, you got to put yourself in opportunity to win in the fourth.
So many memories covering you in high school, and then of course what you did at Tulsa and the pros as well. GJ, Texas State football coach, we appreciate it very much. Good luck during the workouts, fall workouts, and then the season too.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. G.J. Kinne on 365 Sports. Hey, man, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right, yes, sir. Bye-bye. Appreciate you.